This is not just a superhero movie. This is not just a spectacle. This is a movie that's about something.
We live in an age of darkness, a world full of fear, hate, and intolerance. But in every age, there are those who fight against it.
I worry about how democracy survives when one man can move cities with his mind.
As do I.
X-Men is the ultimate storyteller of life in the real world, of the height of prejudice and the height of forgiveness. It's adjusting to being who you are.
I'm sorry, my dear. You're not one of us anymore.
You know, I think that's always been the interesting thing about the X-Men movies. It's always been about subjects that either are very current and active at the moment in our lives, or things that people have dealt with for a long time, being an outsider.
I want to be able to touch people, Logan. A hug. A handshake. A kiss.
Well, the X-Men franchise and the X-Men comic book is really steeped in commentary on racism and classism. And I think most people relate to that on some level. Whether you're a minority or not, everybody can relate to feeling like they're being on the outside, or they're being pushed aside, or they're being discriminated against, or they have to hide something that they don't wish they had to hide. You know, as much as we advance as a society and a culture, it's still there.
Who would want this cure? I mean, what kind of coward would take it just to fit in?
Is it cowardice to save oneself from persecution? Not all of us can fit in so easily. You don't shed on the furniture.
It's really a metaphor for life. You know, everybody is different in their own way, and I think most people are as well, and I think people see themselves. Even though this is a broad comic book fantasy land world, I think sort of the fundamentals of character are very much like people in our society.
It's what we all want.
No. It's what you want.
It strikes at so many chords in our culture today and makes it an enjoyable, thought-provoking adventure that puts emotional legs on an issue that is in our culture today.
When is it acceptable to use our power, and when do we cross that invisible line that turns us into tyrants over our fellow man?
It's the comparison of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And of course, Xavier is Martin Luther King, and he preaches and teaches against the misuse of power. And on the other hand, Magneto is a character that's very similar to Malcolm X, who's a much more radical individual who is willing to fight to destroy this cure because of where he came from. Magneto, as we know, is a character who's a Holocaust survivor.
This cure is voluntary. Nobody's talking about extermination.
No one ever talks about it. They just do it.
Here you have a war going on between three people, three groups, the government, the X-Men, and then the mutants, that are really proud of who they are and that are trying to defend something that they feel is really real.
That cure is meant for all of us. If we want freedom, we must fight for it.
And it's just not necessarily one's a good guy and one's a bad guy. It's grey, and I think that's the other great thing about it.
Magneto wants a war. We'll give him one.
Every society has their taboos that they impose upon us, and we always find a way to stand up and fight for personal freedoms, and that's the X-Men.